I understand where that fear comes from because
Am I enabling them? Like, because I think that there's that battle that we have of like,
people will call this type of play unstructured for kids, but that's a myth.
what's up, Anna? Welcome to Dad Edge. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Uh,
grateful to be here.
I'm grateful to have you. Funny story. You want to hear something kind of funny about your backyard, which is Boston?
Yes.
So I was there in June for a speaking event, and it was the same night that the Celtics won the
Wow.
NBA Finals.
Hmm.
And I'm from St. Louis, so we don't have an NBA team. And you would think I would know that that was going on. I had no clue. And I went to bed that night, and I had to get up the next morning and speak. And I think I might have slept 2 hours because it was pandemonium
Oh, right outside of where you were
right
staying.
outside my hotel.
Yes.
And I'm like, what is going on? Why is it so loud? And then I wake up the next morning. Everyone's like, did you see the game? And I was like, what game? And they're like, the Celtics game. They won last night. And I'm like, oh, that's what was going on. But nobody at the conference that I was at like
Talk about
slept.
it.
Yeah,
No,
like
no,
no
no
one,
one
no one
slept.
slept. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was crazy.
It's
But
yeah, it's we are very, very excited about our sports.
yes, you are. Yes, you are. And you're like a mile and a half from Fenway, which is like a bucket list place for me to go watch a baseball game. That's so cool.
Uh it's such a great place. I'm not a huge baseball fan. I like to watch. My dad liked to watch it growing up, but he would mute the TV and play the radio, which I also found very therapeutic. It was really relaxing.
Really? Okay.
I don't know, he preferred to watch it that way. Um, but there's also concerts at Fenway Park, and this past summer we saw Noah Kahn. I don't know if you know him, but
No, who's
I love
that?
his music so much. Just a fantastic musician, and he like gives a lot towards like supporting mental health access, which is my field. And so we saw a concert there this summer, and I think that was his concert was the highlight of my ever experiences at Fenway Park.
That's so cool. What's his genre? Like, what does he
Oh my
sing?
gosh, he's really popular now. A song that's played a lot is called Stick Season. You probably heard it, but it's like singer-songwriter rock blend. I hope I'm describing that correctly. I don't know if he would approve, but it's fantastic. And some of his songs these days are on loop in my head. Like if I wake up having my anxiety moments in the middle of the night, that's usually also like I'm cycling through one of his like really good songs that's just an earworm. So yeah, that's my favorite Fenway Park story, I would say.
That sounds like my kind of music. I just love that kind of
Oh,
music.
check him out. Yes.
Yeah, just like just you can tell it's like homemade music. It's
Yes.
not. It's like you can. It just has character, right? Versus like all the bells and whistles that they put all the filters through and all that make music doesn't really sound like the original music. But that is so cool.
He's so authentic. Yeah. Do you know Zach Bryan at all?
So it's funny.
Because they have a song together that's really good called
They
Sarah's
do.
Place. Yeah, like Noah Khan was featured on Sarah's Place, which is the song actually when I woke up at 3 in the morning and couldn't sleep for a little bit. That's the song that was playing in my head.
Oh my
So check
gosh.
it out, and then but hopefully you'll sleep better than I was.
It's so funny. My son is a huge fan of Zach Bryan, my 8-year-old of all people. He's my youngest of all the
Yep.
boys. And he loves for me to sing one of the songs. And
Mhm.
I don't call myself a singer by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, like I always joke, I was like, if I start singing in the shower, the shower would probably just turn off on its own. Like, just be like, would
Yeah.
you please get out of it? But
Mhm.
there's one song by Zach Bryan that I can actually hold the notes and I can actually hold the key. And my son loves for me to sing it while we're in the car, and he'll just
Yeah.
play it over and over and over. He's like, sing it again, sing it again. And but yeah, I love Zach Bryan, and I love that kind of music, which is so
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, you'll love
Um,
Noah Khan. You got to check it out. And
I'll
yeah,
have to check him out. Yeah. Um, I'm curious, how did you even get into this field? I mean, like you have experience, obviously, with content with Sesame Street. I mean, that's one of the things I know you hang your hat on, but like, this whole thing of mental health and anxiety and all these different things. Like, how'd you even get involved with this?
So I started my career as a Head Start teacher a long time
Oh
ago.
yeah, sure.
I always wanted to work with kids,
Yeah.
and I think I was always interested in how their brains work, how they learn, and how they play, and like why it matters. But I had also, starting when I was about 10, told everyone I could tell that when I was older, I was going to work at Sesame Street. It was like just something I decided. Partly it was because I had really strict television viewing rules. It was really lame. Like in hindsight, I was not cool for this reason. But I was only allowed to watch PBS for like till I was probably about 10. So I watched Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, Electric Company, and 3-2-1 Contact. I don't know if that was the order, but that was about how they came on.
I totally remember those shows.
Yeah.
I totally
So
remember
good,
all
right?
of, I used to watch those exact ones that you mentioned over. Yes.
Yeah, and they're so good. And like, now there's like literally thousands of you know, pieces of content competing for kids' attention, but I watched it long enough to appreciate the adult humor as well as understand. I was way beyond the target age for the content, but I was able to understand why it worked so well because it was so funny and because it made adults want to watch with their kids, and co-viewing is important. So I understood that at like 10 years old and thought, I want to be part of whatever that is. Like, this is genius, and I love kids. And so I interned, I freelanced. I was in graduate school in New York at the time, and I ended up getting hired out of those, just building my way up through that process, and worked as director of content I was there for about 7 years. It's a fantastic place to be. Yeah.
Did you meet any of like the high level like Muppeteers, like the really famous ones? Who'd you meet?
Yeah, I mean, Eric Jacobson is one of my favorite. He was doing at the time. I have to say, I don't work there anymore. I've been
Right.
in all of these podcast interviews. I've been qualifying because everyone wants to talk about Sesame Street, which I completely get. I don't work there anymore. Some of my dear friends still are there, but I met at the time Eric Jacobson. I like a lot. It was doing like Grover, who's one of my favorite characters, and yeah, so.
I love that. It just brings me so back to that time. Like we watched the Muppet Christmas
Yes.
a couple nights ago, and I was so excited that my kids, it was their idea. Like,
Right.
let's watch the Muppet Christmas. I'm like, yeah, let's watch the Muppet Christmas. Like, if I watch one more of these computerized, like where there's really no like I just love, like, it takes a lot of work to obviously make a movie like that. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But that's really cool.
Yeah. And then the mental health focus came out of like my PhD from NYU is in early childhood elementary education, and when I was working on that, I helped to start an organization called Pop-Up Adventure Play, where we were going into neighborhoods where kids didn't have access to what I would call sort of self-directed play, and working with community-based agencies to increase access to play. And then I moved to Boston. I worked at Boston Children's Museum and was bringing that same sort of initiative to, how to help support play and learning in the museum. But for kids who can't get to the museum, how are we going to bring experiences to them? And then started working more directly with kids in that way again, and became really interested in the increase in anxiety. So I went back to school again and did a master's in social work, and am now a licensed clinical social worker and education consultant. And so I see kids in my private practice. So
That's really
it's kind of
cool.
like that's the short story of a nonlinear career path, but that was always focused on kids and families.
Can I share a compliment with you just real quick?
Sure.
You just seem like, I mean, we've only known each other for like a few minutes, but it just seems like it makes total sense for you to be in the space that you're in with kids. You just give off this vibe of complete and total safety, like psychological safety, like someone who's very warm, approachable, like kind of like can share anything to, but also very understanding, but can also simplify things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that the other person understands, like, and I'm guessing that's probably all the work you've done with kids over the years. You just pick that up, like as soon as before we even hit record, like I just felt like I kind of picked up on that energy, like immediately. You just give off that vibe. I don't know if you've been told that before.
Yeah, I made a little. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think it's the same as I've been listening to your podcast, which I hadn't listened to because I'm not really, I guess, in the demographic for being a dad and like, listening to it, but I've been listening to them more and more, and the same. You have like really authentic conversations with people, and that is not easy to do these days. I think it takes a certain amount of vulnerability to be able to kind of like show up without a rigid plan and just kind of go with a conversation. So, and I definitely never grew out of my desire to play. And so I think kids respond pretty well to me, or have over the years, because I kind of speak their language a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is something we can talk about today. Yeah, like none of us actually ever really grow out of our need for play. It gets sort of like squeezed out of us and neglected. And I like to say the opposite of work is not play. The opposite of play is not work. It's depression. It's kind of like feeling lack of motivation or whatever it is. So, yeah.
Well,
I say playful. That helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's really lean into this like authenticity, vulnerability thing, because I'd love to share something with you, and I would love for you to take that and then let's just run with it as far as like how we can be better dads and better playful dads and encourage play. But I think let's first identify the problem. I've been telling the audience this for the past few months, but every year I hire a coach, and I've been doing this work now for 10 years. And this year I hired a coach by the name of Keith Yackey, who runs a platform called Married Game. And Keith, really fascinating experience that I had with him, which is he has us report in on what he calls the 5 dials every single day. So you have to earn a point in each one of these dials every single day, which is parent. So like, I want to be a good parent, right? Good partner, right? So do something for your wife. Producer, so you got to do something to produce revenue or income at work. So especially if you're a business owner. The last one is power, so it was just confidence and leadership and all that. But the final one is the one that I actually, when I rated myself, is player, playful, being playful.
Yep.
And so he had us when I first started working with him. He's like, I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 with these things. And I rated myself like partner, I was pretty good. Parent, I was pretty good. Producer, I could have been better. Power, I could have been, but player was the one I was like, I'm terrible at that. And I think a lot of it had to do with like, I'm very driven, take life really, really seriously. And I've kind of like put playfulness on the back burner. Like everything is, for lack of a better term, just way too serious. And so like, I was like, well, shoot, man, I really got to earn some points in this player thing, being playful. So I started every single day. About 170 days ago, I have to do at least one playful thing with my kids a day, whether it's wrestle with them, joke with them, mess with them, go out, something. Yeah. And I will tell you, I have just loved it. And I am like, oh my God, where in the heck has this been for so long? But I think a lot of dudes are kind of wired that way, where we're very serious because there's a lot of pressure on our plate and we're trying to do many different things, and we kind of lose that over time. But that's probably an integral part of our role, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you notice that's different now that you changed that, or what's different when you're with your kids?
Oh man, so they brighten up more. Like so when I see them, it's almost like, and my wife is like, when you're not around, like they're always asking where you are. Like so that's kind of new too, which is like, she's like, they're always like, where's dad? Where's dad? And then like, when I come up to them, like, especially if I'm walking in a room and we lock eyes, like I notice my kids are like, they'll kind of like get this look on their face, like, what are you going to do? Like, you know what I mean? And they never really used to do that. So it's added like excitement when we see each other. It's added like the physicality too. Cause I've always wrestled with them, but more, I do it now very intentionally, tickle them. Like my 8-year-old loves for me to like pick him up and throw him on his bed, stuff like that. So I've just noticed like just really positive energy and vibes coming from it.
Yeah. Well, I think when we play with kids and maybe even follow their lead in play.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, there's a transformation in yourself that happens when you like commit to that need, because it's like I said, it doesn't really go away. I mean, we're born wired to survive, and we're born wired to connect. And one of the ways we're born wired to connect through play. Like that is, like, we experience the world. Kids figure things out through play naturally. We don't have to teach them initially how to do that. But then as they get older, I mean, I've even had kids as old as maybe 8 years old if I say, you can do whatever you want with these materials, you can play in any way you want. They're like, what do you want me to do? Like, it just, anything you want with the materials, you can do. And they've already learned that there's like a specific way to do something, or like that they like have to complete an activity in a certain way that somebody wants them to. And so I think when you peel back the layers and you commit to play, you're committing to that type of connection that is deeply wired into who we are as humans and how we connect. And so I think when you do that with your kids, you're giving yourself permission to be true to that part of yourself, but you're also kind of opening that door with them. And one of the key points, like takeaways I was hoping we would get to in this conversation about like how to help kids regulate feelings, is that that's the foundation. If you're speaking kids' language and you're playing with them, that builds trust. And once you have trust, you have a foundation for helping them in anything that they need to learn, but especially about sort of managing feelings and thinking about how they're behaving. So
how does that
nice
work?
Job.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's, all these really cool things have happened, because like it was a mirror was held to my face, and like, I'm like, I'm not doing this so well. But how is it that play helps regulate feelings?
Well, so if you watch kids play, and adults are not intervening to break things up right away or do these kind of things, kids will work through a lot of their feelings and frustrations, et cetera, in their play. And play is it's like the safe arena for the rest of life. So like if you're playing around with something and you're making up the rules and you're trying things out, the risk of failure is minimal, right? And that's basically the purpose of the trying things out. It's the purpose of play. I'm going to explore this thing. I'm going to try it out this way. That didn't work. I'm going to try this. And you can apply that to even like thinking about maybe your business, like all these things where we have to take a little bit of a risk, be comfortable with that, try things out. That didn't work. I'm okay. I'll go to the next thing. I can still stick with this. I have power and agency and resilience. Kids practice that and learn all of that in their play. And then when they're playing with someone else, they have to negotiate and communicate and figure things out. And people will call this type of play unstructured for kids, but that's a myth, because if you've ever tried to enter into kids' play when they're already playing, they'll tell you like, well, you have to be the bad guy. We already have all the good guys. And also that's hot lava that you're standing in. So you're already dead. Right. And, there's so much structure to it. And the kids are figuring that out and doing that. And what I mean by getting into it and playing their language is not like taking over or doing something that's not comfortable for the adult, but just figuring out, how do I play along if they'll let me in? Or how do I invite them by modeling that sort of playful attitude as well? And that's how it works. They figure things out. Maybe something doesn't go their way. They have to figure out what to do with that feeling, et cetera. And yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And this has a positive impact on just mental health in general, right?
Yeah, it does, because it's also, so I say that play is both protective and therapeutic. So It's protective because it's building skills that will be helpful if there's a problem down the line that a child needs to deal with. I work with a lot of kids who have experienced trauma and playing through their story, playing through what happened to them is where the therapeutic part comes in. So it's protective because it helps build almost like a protective shield a little bit. And then also when there's been trauma, or just for kids who have general anxiety and are struggling to develop social skills, I use a lot of play in my practice to help them build the skills that are lacking, or to process what happened in their lives.
Do you think that the traditional school system is kind of like the arch enemy of this?
Well, I think certainly when I've advocated for play in different, like in curriculum development that I've done or with schools, does tend to sometimes take on this like 4-letter word quality to it where no one wants to talk about it or say it. I just, in some ways, yes. I think that certainly when schools put too much emphasis on like zero tolerance policies for some types of behavior, and there's a very rigid set mindset about how things have to be, there's not a lot of wiggle room for kids to develop the types of skills that I'm talking about that they develop in play. And when teachers are only teaching to tests, there's a lot lost. And I think the majority of teachers would agree with that, especially in early childhood, like through 3rd grade. But I do a lot of teacher trainings and workshops where this is exactly what I talk about. How do you bring back that essential time for self-directed play? And then what do you do as adults to support that in effective ways? And then for parents, sort of the same thing. Like, how do you bring this into your kids' overscheduled lives where so much of the time is spent in adult-directed activities?
Yeah, it seems, especially with, is there an age limit to this, do you think? Like, is it like, hey, we can do things with play for, up until you're in middle school and then we just don't do that anymore? Or is this something that you want to do kind of like throughout your life?
You definitely want to do it throughout your life, but I was just I was doing a teacher training last week where the people who had brought me in to do the training, like the teacher trainers within the school, were saying that they felt that in 3rd grade, it starts to drop off. It's like that the idea that kids still need to play drops off as early as 3rd grade. And in my opinion, like you mentioned earlier, this is a lifelong commitment to a process. And it might not look the same, like the way you play in a self-directed way as a 3 or 4-year-old might not look the same as it does. It won't look exactly the same as it does at 9 or 10 or 49. It changes throughout our lives, but it's a commitment to a mindset and of curiosity and, being vulnerable. I think one of the reasons that when adults play, kids connect with them better is because they're showing that they're vulnerable and they're willing to do something that maybe looks a little silly or it's not serious and buttoned up and straight. It's like that requires some vulnerability. And when building a relationship with a child, that vulnerability can go a long way. So both, whether it's like your own kids at home or in a professional way. So yeah, I'll talk about play for hours.
That is so that is so true though. Like, now that I think about it, like anytime I asked, like as a kid, an adult to play with me, whether that be outside, we're going to play catch or we're going to play with Army guys like GI Joes or whatever, that kind of thing. Like, I remember very vividly, like, adults that would play with me and if they were just going through the motions or if they actually were like in it. And it's really fascinating. But even from a kid perspective, because I can still remember that to this day, like it was very, very connecting, like from a kid's perspective, that an adult would play with you. Your book, How to Train Your Amygdala, like this is fascinating. So amygdala is basically the primal brain, right? The fight, flight, or freeze, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the reactionary button, correct?
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about, and besides, you can feel free to get scientific, but I guess you can train your amygdala?
Yes.
Okay, how so?
So the book is called How to Train Your Amygdala, and it's for younger kids, but I've read it with kids as old as like 12 in my practice, and adults have said they read it and they're like, wait, I have this in my brain? I didn't know this. And it's definitely trainable. Its job is to basically kick off, it's the usual suspect of the threat response in the brain and the body. It interacts with cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and it can take you into, if you look back on your life and you think about the moments where you felt the least in control of your emotion and times or where you felt hot, sweaty, shaky with anger, chances are your amygdala was doing its job, which is to protect you from death. It's part of our survival instinct. And we need it because we would step into traffic, we would take risks that are not good risks without it. But what happens in the book, in the story, and what we know happens in real life is that it makes mistakes, and we don't do a great job of distinguishing between a real threat and a perceived threat. And so the point of the book is try to help kids learn that early. I didn't understand the neuroscience of this until I was in my third graduate degree program as a full-grown adult with two kids that were already, 12 and 9 or something. And I wish I had this. I wish I knew about the why of what was happening in my brain and body when I was a teenager or younger than that. So yeah, and you can train it by basically recognizing what's happening and using skills to calm that threat response, which you talk about sort of taking that distance between the self-reflection that you talk about, where you're taking the distance back before you answer a question or ready to talk about your feelings. That's exactly, you're already doing it. It just gives some language to it.
I would love to just, how does this show up, I guess, for us? I mean, obviously, if the amygdala is in the driver's seat with our kids, they're probably maybe having a meltdown. They're super angry, or maybe they're running away from you in Walmart.
Everything above. Yes, all of the above. So, well, you know what a tantrum looks like? I mean, you have kids, so you know what a tantrum looks like. You know what that locked body, the toddler tantrum. The whole body, every muscle in the body is as tight as it can possibly be. The face is red. There might be tears. Not a lot of breath happening. That's the best visual I can think of for what it looks like when the amygdala is really doing its job, but in a confused way. Because, okay, here's the thing. The amygdala can't tell the difference between a real lion and a perceived lion. And this is what another takeaway I'm hoping for today is to come back to this, because listeners can tune into that. What does my brain think is the lion right now? My 4-year-old? Because they won't put on their shoes and just get out of the house, and I've asked 25 times for them to do that. Because the brain will convince you that the 4-year-old is a lion. Threatening, because you're making me feel insignificant, like I don't have any power. I can't, what's wrong with me as a dad? I can't get the next thing to happen. And in tuning into that and looking at your child and saying, is my child really a lion? So this is the test. Is the thing, the person, whatever, really a lion? And if not, which most of the time it won't be, how do I calm that threat response before I make my next move? But when a child is in threat response mode and the adult goes into threat response mode, nobody's listening at all anymore to what's being talked about, and no one's using rational thought because both are just stuck in that fight, flight, freeze response.
Is that also true for married couples who are arguing?
100%. Yeah, okay. And all these podcasts I've been on to promote this book, I've been saying, I'm going to tell you a lot of advice today and talk about these things that are true and real and important. And I don't always, obviously, manage to do this in myself. So, and it's good to pay attention to, because when you can see, I can see it happening now. If you could see the inside of your brain, which we can't, we always look out from our heads, right? That's I always think if someone could eventually attach an fMRI machine in real time all the time to everybody's brain, so we could see a screen of a visual of what's happening, we'd have a lot more understanding. Since we can't do that, if you are talking to your spouse and you are getting hot and you feel like your muscles are tightening up and you can know what's happening in your body and know, okay, I can picture this little tiny part of my brain, the amygdala, is triggering this response. It's making me think that this is a lion coming at me. I'll often tell the kids I work with to look around the room and actually use your eyes to look around. Tell your brain, there's no real lion here. we're in an argument about the messy kitchen because you thought I was doing it and I thought you were doing it. And now it's just a disaster. And we have friends coming over and like, you're looking like a lion to me because this feels threatening. I wasn't heard. I didn't, you didn't understand me. The other person is like, I didn't know. Basically, the two threat responses are now engaged. And until one of you looks around the room, realizes there's no actual lion here, tries to access language and rational thought to bring that down. I mean, that's at the crux of conflict resolution, is recognizing what's happening and then putting steps in place to co-regulate, to kind of come down together. And sometimes I do that, and sometimes I forget, even though I talk about this all day long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
welcome to the party. I've been doing a dad show for 10 years, and when I screw up, I'm like, oh yeah, like you should probably quit that. But no, I totally understand. Obviously then you probably know about mirror neurons and all that, right?
Yep.
So is there influence where, let's just say our kids are having a meltdown, right? Or the spouse is coming at you like a lion because the kitchen is a mess and you did it, right? And then we remind ourselves, okay, this kid is not a lion. This wife is not a lioness, like even though I feel threatened right now, but I can be calm and I can be rational. And this other person seeing me like this could perhaps influence them to do the same. Is that pretty accurate, or is that effective?
It's definitely effective. And I think I would say it's definitely effective, and it's more effective than what sometimes happens, I think, especially in any relationship, which is that instead of like actually practicing and doing what you want to do in yourself, you might tell the other person to take a deep breath, for example. Like, okay. Which
that would work great on my wife.
And the reason, so the reason, and with kids too,
you should just breathe, Jess. No,
well, it's just such a common instinctive thing to do. But if you think about that in the context of a child and a parent relationship too, or a teacher with a child, like when I was trained to teach, there was a big focus on this language of like using your words. Right. So if a child was hitting, instead of hitting, you say just use your words. But the thing about the amygdala is that when it really goes into threat response mode and sends the rest of the brain and body into threat response mode, it actually limits language ability, because if you were being chased by a lion, would you stop to tell someone about how you were feeling about that situation?
I totally would. I would just turn around to the lion and be like, it'd be great is if you just stopped chasing me. You're probably getting tired anyway. Oh, wait, I've just been eating. So
How are you feeling? Oh, okay, because I'm feeling anxious right now because my heart is racing because I'm running as fast as possible because I want to survive.
Right.
No, we would not stop to talk about it. And so when in the moment of this, it's not effective to just jump to like, oh, just take a deep breath, you're fine. Because then the child, in the context of a parent-child relationship, the child is like, oh, you don't see the lion at all. And if you don't see the lion at all, I am really in danger. Like, especially if the child's just even anxious about something, like not wanting to go to school or being afraid of spiders or like any of the things that come up. If the parent does the whole like just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just move through this because there's no feelings, like don't worry about it, that's even more horrifying, because then the primary caregiver that would help that child survive doesn't see the scary thing, doesn't see the lion.
So like the whole, my advice to my children, my boys, is like, grow a set of balls doesn't really help.
No.
I'm just kidding. I actually don't say that to them. I don't. It's funny. I don't say that to them because now I'm not an angel with this, but like I remember my mom was married to this guy for 6 years. And if I showed any emotion of anger or sadness, especially sadness, oh man, that was shut down. Only babies cry, man up, quit your crying, that kind of thing. And like, I remember like that sucked as a kid. Yeah. Like, especially like 6, 7, 8-year-old, you're like, well, I remember looking at my dad one time and being like, what am I supposed to do? Like, because as a kid, you feel like you're going to, like, with that type of emotion, like, you feel like you're going to explode, right?
Yeah.
With sadness or being upset. It's just like I think as a kid, you have a very hard time containing that.
Yeah.
And so I can understand that. But what I've noticed is validating my kids' feelings is insanely powerful. Like, even just calling out what I'm like, oh man, that sounds really frustrating. Yeah. Like, I totally get that, and just validation seems to do a pretty good job of calming them down. Is that pretty accurate as well?
100%,
Okay.
because you're basically saying, I see the lion, like I see it, but you don't go into panic mode necessarily. Like,
Right.
So I think the other side of this. So yes, absolutely, just validation is good, and I like when I work with parents, I like to help them create sort of a supportive response, something like, I see the lion, and I'm confident you're going to be able to cope with it. So if it's an anxiety, if the amygdala is going into threat response mode and it's making that child too afraid to make a new friend, if it's a child that can't raise their hand at school because it just seems so horrifying and they think they're going to be attacked by a lion, this imagined lion. Like, I see your worry. I hear you that you're worried, and I'm confident you're going to be able to cope, because that's where we get to. You can't be confident that everything's going to go okay for our kids. There are going to be hard times. There's going to be stressful things.
Sure.
But what we're saying is we know you can cope. And then that's calming to the amygdala, because I'm with you. I see what's happening. And I'm confident that you're going to use strategies to be able to manage it. Not to make the feelings go away. Like, what this man was saying to you was basically, your feelings don't matter, and so just put them aside. And of course, we know that feelings go somewhere. So if they're not coming out, they're going in.
What's fascinating about this too is, so I wasn't, my dad, my biological father, has been married to my stepmom for, I think, 46 years. But I've only known her for the past 20. So, cause I didn't meet my biological father till I was 30, but, that's a totally different story. But I have two younger half brothers. She's one of those moms that, she started reading child psychology books super early, and she was raised in a very functional family. And then she's very good about, like, love and logic and validation. And one of the things that, even as an adult, like, when I'd go to her and talk to her about something, she would do that very thing. She'd be like, yeah, it's really frustrating, but you know what? You're really smart. And if anybody's going to figure this out, it will be you. Like, look at all the things you've done. And and she would never give me advice on something. She'd just validate where I was. And then she would just be like, yeah, but you're going to figure this out just fine. Like, I've seen you do this, seen you do that. And when you walk away from a conversation, yeah, I'm going to go figure this out. Like, it's fascinating how empowering it is, when someone just does that very thing. I think, I don't want to speak for all men, but doing this work for a decade and my own self as a dad and listening to other men, and I still struggle with this, is, I don't know if you've ever been asked this, but I think that this is what's really on the mind for a guy. It's like, okay, if my kid is coming at me with the same pressure and the same thing that's ailing them and the same feeling over and over, and I'm validating, I'm doing all this other stuff, am I enabling them? Like, because I think that there's that battle that we have of, like, if I don't help this kid actually get over this, I'm just enabling this, whatever it is that they're feeling. And I'm just, maybe there's a part of me that's even causing it more. I think that's the story we tell ourselves, but I don't think we really understand it.
It's such a good question. There is a point where, so you don't, back to the lion analogy. If your child thinks there's a lion, they're afraid of something, and you want to help them, you also don't want to cower in the feeling completely, just like go down the well of despair, because then the message for the child is, okay, we're both going to get eaten by the lion. Like,
yeah, we don't want that.
right. So it's like, you can't ignore it completely and pretend it doesn't exist. And you also don't want to go so far down into the feeling that you forget the coping part that I had mentioned. So I think I understand where that fear comes from, because when our kids are scared, the instinct kicks in to protect them. And sometimes we can get overprotective and not give our kids the chance to have like a productive struggle in life, right? And figure something out. I think on one of your podcasts, you had said that one of the episodes you had said that you made your son make a phone call that he didn't want to make or something.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, yeah, that's an example of exactly what we're talking about, right? Like you're not running away and heading out to get coffee or something. You're not leaving completely, and you're not like, it is really hard to make a phone call. I don't know how you're gonna. This is really tricky. Okay, I'll do it. You know, you're right. Like this I don't, because the message then is I don't think you can cope.
Yeah, right.
Right.
We take away like an opportunity for them to prove themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, it's basically about being present, and to do any of this requires first calming your own threat response, because in order to do that, I mean, a common thing that happens with parents and kids that I work with is that the child will get anxious about something. And a lot of times, if there's two parents in the home, one will go on a seesaw all the way to demanding. Like, come on, I wasn't scared like this when I was your age. What is the big deal? Like, just get your shoes on, get your backpack, and go to school.
Yeah.
And then the other one is saying, and just by the nature of what happens in a relationship, the other one has to go even further the other way to create equilibrium. And then one parent is basically down the rabbit hole of despair. And the child is sitting there in the middle of the seesaw, like, what the heck?
Yeah, like which one is it? Oh, so
And
true.
so you want to be in the middle and come back as close to center as possible. And in the book, How to Train Your Amygdala, there's information at the back that talks about this exact idea of how do you both recognize the threat response and then help kids talk about it and manage it themselves. And I've had really little kids, like 4 years old, say to a parent, like, Mom, I think your amygdala is doing like jumping jacks right now. I think that you are in threat response mode.
Oh my God. That's when you know, okay, you're way too smart.
Yeah.
We're done with this book. No, I'm kidding. That's so true. Can I give you one other example here that, this one might be a little bit more out in left field, but I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about it. So like, I think what we're talking about is great for younger kids, right? Like regulating their emotions, validating that kind of thing. Like, hey, I see that you're scared of the lion. I see the lion too. I'm not afraid of it. Here's, maybe, but anyway, so I'm going to give you a scenario that just happened this weekend. I'm not going to give you the details because it's privacy of my oldest son. My oldest son came to me. This was during a wrestling tournament, and it's very interesting, right? And he's just like, hey, can I talk to you about something? I'm like, of course. And I thought it was wrestling related. And he's like, can we go for a walk? And it was between his matches and all that. I'm like, yeah, sure. So we walked the halls, and he shared something with me that he was had tremendous anxiety about. And I'm not going to go into what it is. But it was something I was like, wow, yeah, but I also knew he really doesn't need to worry about that this much, because I know the outcome is not going to be what he thinks it is. But I validated his emotional state. So I'm like, dude, I was like, first of all, thank you so much for telling me that. That took a lot of courage for you to tell me that. I was like, second of all, let's talk about it. Like if I was in your situation, dude, I'd be very stressed out. I'd be very overwhelmed too. Like you're feeling the right feelings, right? And then he just talked more and talked more. And the whole time he's talking, I'm sitting there thinking like, he's worrying about this. It's insanely important that he keeps what he's worrying about top of mind, because this absolutely could happen if he's not careful. So here's what I'm going to do. And here's what I did. I validated his emotional state. I allowed him to talk, but I did not say, you know what, the chances of the outcome you're thinking is going to happen is absolutely minuscule. It probably won't happen whatsoever. I didn't do that. Because here's why. I actually wanted him to sit with it. I wanted him to feel it. I wanted him to be like, I wanted him to almost like the anxiety of the situation, for him to learn it. And for me not to like, tamper it down. And in the moment I was like, I don't know why I was doing it, other than the fact of like, I really want him to learn that this is probably not a good thing to do in the future. And I want him to sit with it. But
You mean
What do
like which part did you think wasn't good for him to do in the future? Like the cycling, getting so stuck in it, or
the
just
actual thing?
okay.
Yeah.
Uh oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So this is really important. What we're talking about mostly today is how to help when there's a perceived threat that's not rational.
Right. Okay.
We
Okay.
we need anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, we need our kids to be able to trust an instinct in themselves. Like, this is not safe. I shouldn't do this, and it's making me anxious. And then you want to be able to say, yeah, like, I don't know if this is right in this case, but listen to yourself. Like, that does sound, I hear you. That sounds stressful. And what you didn't do is just like fix it. You didn't say either don't worry about it or here's what you're going to do. You basically allowed the feelings to be okay, validated that he came to you to talk about it, which is the most critical thing we want for our kids, is to never feel alone and to know that there's someone there that will listen. And so I think it's incredibly, obviously, super positive that he knew that he could trust the process with you and bring whatever he brought to you. And sometimes you want to say, yeah, trust. That sounds like a legitimate lion, right? Like we need the one thing that's really important to remember is that we're not fighting against any bad part of ourselves. So like any listeners that are thinking, I didn't know about this amygdala thing in my brain, didn't know that this is what was going on. And wow, I am like that all the time in traffic. I'm angry. I'm like mad at the person in front of me in line and all this. I'm always seeing the lion. It's never too late to start to recognize what's happening and knowingly do something like about it. And it's not that there's a bad part of you. This is like a friend in your brain that's working to protect you and keep you safe. It's just like that friend you have that is a little impulsive at times and is still fun, but sometimes hard to hang out with because you never know what they're going to do next. Or
So true. Yeah.
Right? It's a good part of yourself that just makes mistakes sometimes, basically.
And speaking of which, the authorities are coming to get you, I hear. Finally,
Sorry.
they caught you. It's I'm just kidding with you.
I'm in my office today. Usually it's quieter at home, but I had to do this from here today, and it's a little louder outside.
That's okay. It's bringing back memories from when you guys won, the
Yeah.
the NBA finals. I want to take this a step further with older kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to talk about so how to train your amygdala in kids, because I think in older kids. So right now, as I'm talking to you, right, it's finals week.
Yes.
Oh joy.
Yep.
Right. So I have two older ones. My two younger ones aren't there yet, but my two older ones, their amygdalas are going haywire right now. Like it's the end of the semester. They're really wanting, my 16-year-old's really gunning for a 4.0. He really wants it bad. My 18-year-old is like really trying to like last night, it's finals week, and he was literally Anna, he was literally sitting there at the table, Anna, like just staring. And I'm like, and I just like kind of walked past him, and we were done with dinner, and I was like, Ethan, are you okay? And he's just like, I'm just really overwhelmed right now. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, I just have a lot of things going on this week. I was like, yeah, it's finals week. I was like, what's on your plate? And he rattled off like all these things. And I'm like, my first thought was like, holy crap, dude.
I wouldn't be able to do that.
Right. I was like, dude,
I'm a grown adult, and
I was like,
me to think about it. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that sounds horrendous. So like, here's where I was at last night. The amygdala is going off. For him, it was freeze.
It was what?
Freeze, fight, flight, freeze. For him, It was like, I literally don't know what to do. So we, and I understand where he's at, because like I'm wired a lot like him when I was older. It's if I have 20 things to do, I'm like, which one of these do I do first? Like, that's what kind of paralyzes me. Like, how do I get started? And we were talking, and he was very like, and this is unlike him, but he was very like trigger happy with like his responses to me. Like and I'm like, so tell me what's going on. He's like, I just got a lot to do. And I was like, yeah, man, like it's finals week. Of course you do. It's a lot. Like, so what do you have going on? He's like, I got a psychology final tomorrow. I got to get a study guide for it. And then I got a math one the next day. And then I got to write this paper. And he was like angry at the same. So he's freezing and fighting sort of at the same time. And I got to be honest. I was like, I don't know how to help him right now other than like, I'll validate where he's at. And then I walked away from the conversation and be like, I sucked. So like, what do we do in that situation where it's like, oh my gosh, like this poor kid like has no clue what to do and he's very fiery. Like, how do we be effective there?
I mean, I actually think it's good that you walked away for the moment, because if you had stayed and tried to like really dig into it there and try to fix it, I think he probably would have gone higher into either the avoidance, which is like the shutting down, or the fighting with you, because you can't fight against the psychology exam.
Right.
But you can fight against your dad, right? Like so
true.
I think that you did a good job in what you did. The one thing I would say is like, it's really hard when you're already in overwhelm mode to use strategies.
Okay.
If you didn't use the strategies when you were calm. So the most important thing I think is to help kids understand what works best for them, of cross ages, teenagers too. For some kids, taking a break in a separate room and doing some breathing really helps. Like some kids will tell me my favorite thing to do, and it's one of the things that's modeled in How to Train Your Amygdala, is figure out what your best breathing strategy is. Because if you can do that like you brush your teeth every day, if you can develop a practice like you did with play, with strategies that calm your amygdala response when you're calm, you're much more likely to be able to use them when you have an exam. So the one thing you could come back to is like, oh my gosh, you were super like, this is such a busy week. You were super overwhelmed last night. You know, I'm just curious, like, how did it go and what did you do to cope? How did you do it? Like, what are the tools that you have that allow you to do that? And then do we want to talk about any others? Because it happens to me too. Like, adults go into threat response like that too. Adults get overwhelmed. This is what I do, meaning you. What's your adaptive coping strategy? And how do we practice that together? And the reason breathing works, back to the lion analogy, is if you were being chased by a lion, would you stop to take really long, nice deep breaths?
I'd probably do it as he was eating me so I could get the last few breaths in before I die. But no.
when we go into threat response mode, we start to breathe in the upper part of our chest, and that
right.
and then or we hold the breath, and that further sends a message back to the brain. There must be something really dangerous happening or about to happen, because we're not breathing. We're holding our breath. We're getting ready for that thing. So it's neurofeedback is, we are in danger. We should be panicked about this exam. That's why we're holding our breath and getting ready to fight the exam, or run away from the exam, or hide under the desk during the exam and just go into turtle mode, right? And what we need to do is train the brain to understand that an exam is not a lion. And one of the ways to do that is to help, like, have the coping strategies when things are calm, so that you can use them when there's a stressor that the brain is mistaking for a lion.
And from a physiological response, right? So if we're chest breathing, holding our breath, we're actually activating the sympathetic nervous system, which is the amygdala. And if we're doing the deep diaphragmic, if that's even a word, the belly breathing, that's actually parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, which is going to calm us down, correct?
Yeah. And appreciating the rest and digest. My husband and I but both of our daughters have had a lot of health problems over time. And so now anything that happens with them and one of them's sick, I go into my own threat response mode, because I'm bracing for like the next emergency or what's going to happen with them. And there've been a couple moments lately when things are going well and both of them are healthy and doing well at school, et cetera. And we've been anchoring in those moments. And I'm saying, Ken, like right now, there's nothing that's an emergency. Let's just like appreciate that and like be together in that moment. And it's so helpful and fills up your cup so that like the next time it gets tipped over, you have a little to spare, you know? So moments like that are anchoring with our kids, with our partners, whoever it is, are really good at highlighting the rest and digest, because typically we don't do that as humans. We're looking for our next threat. We're looking for the next thing that's going to threaten our survival. Be in the rest and digest. Be in that, like, the moments that make you realize that things are not an emergency.
I just want to take a big spotlight and just shine it on what you just said, because I think we're so bad at that. We being, like, just about everybody. My wife was giving me so much trouble about that here recently, because we're in a really, really good season, and we came, like, last year was kind of horrific, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of things. It was almost like there was a target on our family's back, and, like, it was one thing after another. Like, it was, and some of the things were, like, no joke, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, my wife and I were talking about this, and she was just like, "You seem different, you know, because we're in a really good season. You seem like you're different." I was like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You seem like you're enjoying things more." I was like, "It's because I'm making myself enjoy them more." Because she jokes with me. We've been married 21 years. She's known me for 28. She's like, "I always feel like when you're in a good season, you're always peeking around the corner when the T-Rex is going to attack us again." Because that is, it's like, because she'd be like, "Oh my gosh, things are going great." I'm like, "Yeah, things are great. I hope things aren't going to get bad." Like, that was kind of like I was just, like, waiting for it. Like, when is it going to happen? And I've decided, you know what? No, I'm just going to enjoy it, because yeah, whether I'm worried about it or not, it's going to either happen or it won't, but I'm wasting my time. I had a good friend of mine tell me, if you have anxiety about the future and you're in a good season, you're making a down payment on something that could never happen, you know, with your anxiety.
Yes, that's right.
But yeah, that's really good. What other ways can we calm ourselves? I mean, obviously the breath is just such a beautiful anchor for something like that. But, like, in your book, like, what else do you suggest?
The three main strategies that the amygdala asks the reader to help with, so that it's like the amygdala is talking directly to the reader through the whole book, makes a mistake, realizes that it made the mistake, perceived a threat that wasn't there, and says, "Hey, sometimes I make mistakes and I need your help." Introduces controlled breathing with, like, 3 or 4 different strategies, and then muscle tightening and relaxation on purpose. So, you know how we talked about the toddler posture before, and how every muscle in the body is tight.
Yeah.
That's when the brain is doing that to you to get you ready to fight or run. When you intentionally tighten and release muscles with a mindfulness approach, it teaches the brain, oh no, you know, this isn't a threat. This is on purpose. This is with choice. This isn't something that's, like, happening to you. You're making the decision to tighten and release. So in the book, that's shown as, like, squeezing a stuffed animal. It can be a pillow and teenagers can do this too. Anybody can. It doesn't have to be for a little kid, but just pressure on the abdomen and squeezing something tight and then releasing is neurofeedback to the brain. Everything is calm. And then the cognitive part. You can change your thoughts to change how you feel. And I wish I had known that a long time ago. Also, we walk around with narratives about ourselves all the time that can cause a lot of anxiety and unnecessary stress. And if you flip the thought to picture somewhere you feel safe, or picture a person that makes you feel safe, when you can tell your amygdala is going into threat response mode, very powerful as a way to calm feelings, and then feelings change behaviors. And in that loop, there's a lot of different ways you can manage the threat response. Most importantly is that play that we came to at the beginning, because playfulness helps to calm the amygdala. If you were being chased by a lion, if a child was being chased by a lion, would they stop to play?
No.
So when the child is playing and an adult is playing with them, it's sending a message back to the brain: we are safe. We are not hypervigilant. We are not looking around to see what's coming at us. We are focused on this activity together and engaging with each other and relaxed. So that sends a message back to the brain that we are calm. and figuring out what works for each individual is what's most important. Like what works for one kid is not necessarily going to work for others, but what I put in the book is sort of evidence-based, known to be helpful. And then you can kind of build on it and make it your own as a parent with kids.
You just said something, and I don't know if I interpreted it differently but you said that when an adult is playing with a kid, we're safe. Mm-hmm. Is that to also, are we to assume that our kids actually feel more connected? And I mean, this is a dumb question, I guess, in a way, but like, do our kids feel safer when we are playing with them than by themselves?
I think there's benefits to playing with kids and benefits to giving them the time and the space to play the way that we did in the 80s. Right? Like when nobody was like scheduling, like you didn't have to be to 6 different activities each day. And like, you were outside until it got dark and like all the things that we have so much nostalgia for now. I think playing with kids is really important for certain reasons. Yeah. Definitely calming to the amygdala for both people, for the adult and the child. And they're both true. It's great for kids to have time to just play by themselves with peers, like we talked about earlier, and figure things out on their own. So I think they're both really important. But if an adult is playing with a child and deeply playing, like really curious and connected and paying attention to what the kid is interested in and doing, chances are that's regulating for the adult's amygdala as well, because you can't be in that mindset at the same time that your brain is in threat response mode. The calming effect of being focused on the play that is calming to the threat response and is protective for both the adult and the child moving forward.
So true. One just final question of clarity, and then I want to get to how men can connect with you and if they want to connect and learn more. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the contracting of muscles, right? Like kind of like helps calm you down. Is this why, so physical fitness, physical activity, like for me, like I've been in the gym for like 30 years and and I find that to be the most therapeutic thing for me. I tell my friends, my wife all the time, I was like, if I even got no physical benefits from it whatsoever, I would still do it.
Still do it. Yeah.
I would still do it because it feels euphoric to me. When it's almost like I've gotten out all my anxieties, all my tension, my stress, like I feel euphoric, like mentally clear, so much better. Is that why?
Yeah. I mean, well, exercise, physical activity releases endorphins in the brain. It's like all the feel-good hormones for sure. Also, you're focused on intentionally using your muscles.
Right.
So you're choosing in a controlled, fun way that you appreciate to tighten and release muscles, which is so different from what happens when your guard goes up in threat response, where you don't think about it. This all happens automatically. And so it's very regulating to engage in all those activities. And one of the things that kids need is that kids need that too, right? They need the time to be physically active to balance a lot of the time that's spent sitting at school, for example. And it's very regulating. So 100%.
So true. Yeah. So true. This has been awesome. I have loved talking to you. Like, this has been so informative. I want to make sure that the guys can find your book, How to Train Your Amygdala, and all of your resources for that matter. So what's the best place for them?
My website is annahousleyjuster.com, where you can reach out to me and connect in a message. And there's more information about the work that I do there. And the book is available everywhere books are sold. I am really bad at self-promotion. So I've learned to actually say this. If you like it and you want to leave a review on Amazon, please do, because I just didn't ask anybody. And I realized you kind of have to. You do. So if people like it and they want to reach out or leave a review, I would appreciate it. And my goal is that at some point, all little kids know the word amygdala like they know heart, stomach, muscles, and that we start teaching kids about their brains as early as possible, because I think it's a life skill it'll always be useful to be able to understand and regulate.
I agree. It will. And I love the fact that you've like really have normalized this, you know, it's just like, hey, it's just a part of your brain. You're not broken. You're not this, you're not that. It's just, and I love the fact that like you put in your book, like, oh yeah, I know I'm your amygdala, but I don't always tell the truth.
Yes, exactly.
I love how you do that. Cause like we buy into it. Even
Yeah.
as adults, we buy into it.
Yep.
It's like we just do. So I love that. Well, guys, you're not going to have to look very far for this. We'll have all the links in the show notes. Head on over to thedadedge.com/512 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/512 for this show. Anna, this was awesome. I could talk to you all day about this stuff. Like I geek out over this stuff, and this was great. Thank you for coming on.
I'm so grateful. Thank you for having me. It's so fun to talk to you.
You bet. Back at you. Gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Reach out to Anna, you know, grab her book and leave her a review. Trust me when I say us authors, us content creators, we so appreciate those reviews. It's not even funny. So go leave her a review. She'll really appreciate it. So, Anna, thank you again.
Thank you.
You bet.